Welcome to the UST Education recorded webinar series. This session is powered by US Transactions. UST is a boutique payment processing firm providing you with personalized service. We offer agnostic, best fit technology solutions for associations, nonprofits, and enterprise clients.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for coming to this. This is I was telling Nicole, this is new content for me. I'm really want us to today to be looking around the corner a bit and really thinking about what's happening with technology in a way that can create insights from things that before were really just content. And so that's what we're going to be talking about. I'm Michael Hoffman, and I do a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. So if we're not connected on LinkedIn, connect with me there. That's the best place for me. I'm the CEO at Gather Voices, where we turn member stories into strategic assets that drive real impact. So my first question for you all is thinking about member stories. Where do member stories show up in your organization? Is it marketing and advocacy, events, education? Do you have any way where you're systematically bringing member stories into your organization and activities? And so, let's see here. Member spotlights, I see Jennifer says, and Diana, webpage spotlights. Yeah, excellent. Events and newsletters, um, communications, events. Kenneth says insight for member stories. Uh, Excellent. Nancy would like to learn how to convince key stakeholders that we need a video content pipeline. Hopefully, I will help you with that a little bit today. And excellent. All right. Well, let me jump in here. Thank you all for sharing. So, as you all know, associations are full of stories. Every organization has a wealth of untapped stories and sometimes tapped stories and sometimes untapped stories, but members have. I think the reason that I work in associations is associations are really unique in the world in that the customers, the members are the experts, right? So if you're the association of orthopedic surgeons, your members are orthopedic surgeons. They're the ones who know the most about orthopedic surgery. And so getting them to share their stories is really core to the mission that you have. That's really different than any other type of company and any other type of customer, right? That is more the expert than the company itself in what the company does. So thinking about your members and their everyday practice and the things they do in the front line, thinking about the advocates, especially advocacy, such a key part of what associations do. Learning, volunteers, industry practitioners. We know the stories exist. I think the biggest challenge has been, and for many organizations continue to be, how do we create a systematic way to collect those stories? And so, what I'm going to do today is talk about a little bit about that, but also about what happens today when we do create a systematic way to collect stories. What can we do with that? And I think that's where we're seeing the incredible advances in AI and technology generally being able to make those stories more valuable and be able to extract insights and intelligence from those stories in a way that just simply was not possible even just a couple years ago. So the stories, the opportunity is there for all of you. And again, I think we see organizations at Gather Voices, we see organizations all over the map in terms of storytelling and how much they're doing and in the ways in which they're doing. And our focus is on video, but video is not the only way to tell stories. I think the reason I want to focus on video today is one, it's because my expertise, but also because when we talk about extracting insights, video is incredibly rich with data, and that data was heretofore, impossible to extract in any systematic way or easy way. And today that's changed. And so, we have the ability to do it. But I'm sure probably many of you use prop fuel or other ways that you're getting stuff back from members. And I think all of that's important. But we're going to focus today on video in particular. And so, the what these stories can do for you is create credibility. We've definitely seen that real stories from real people perform better than marketing stuff. And so we also see with advocacy, legislators don't just want to hear from lobbyists, they want to hear from their real constituents, and they want to hear stories from the field because they need those stories to make decisions uh, uh, to help them make sense of their decisions and the like. We also know that when people share their stories, they feel more connected to the organization. So the story, getting a more systematic way to get stories and share stories is actually not only those stories themselves are useful, but when people share their stories, it actually tightens the relationship between those people and the organization. They're articulating why they care. And by articulating why they care, it changes their brain. It changes how they feel about being connected. It's forced them to put that into words, and now that sticks in a different way. Education, obviously, and then we're going to talk a little about this idea of strategic insight. So a lot of this is really based on the value of these member stories is based a lot on trust, and we've seen trust really shift dramatically over the last few years, more to peers and away from institutions. People don't trust brands the way they used to. They don't trust institutions. They certainly don't trust government. They don't trust, many things today. We're in a bit of a trust crisis, but people do trust their peers. And the reason I think that we're seeing a a real energy in in-person events is because of people wanting to connect to peers and not just again uh, content that's top down that's coming from an organization. And so you see this everywhere, right? The reviews are a big deal, and the idea of like, what do other people think, not just what does the company say. And I think you have to think of yourself that way as well. Your organization is not selling widgets, but you have to think about when you're talking about the value that your organization brings, the value that educational program brings, the value of an event, the value of your membership dues. You're going to have more credibility having members talk about that more than you talking about that. And associations are really uniquely positioned to lift up those trust signals in a way that again other companies are not. And so if that's not something that is top of mind for your organization, it really should be. I don't see, and in the age of AI and where people can create fake everything, I think we're going to see the video stories of real people be even more important. And so if you haven't invested in that direction, I think it's only going to be more important to think about, how do we lift up those real voices from our members. So, there's this engagement challenge that is related to the fact that when we're competing for attention, we're not just competing with ourselves or with other associations or things like that. We're really competing with the fact that there's just a massive amount of stuff and content that's everywhere. And so we're seeing things like email open rates falling, and we're seeing declining engagement in many different ways. The social media noise is insane, really, and we also see from a generational point of view that younger members have different expectations, and the expectations that they have are often about participating and being active in a way that wasn't true necessarily of their older counterparts, and so. broadcasting just that top-down messaging is not working as well. And so the question is, what replaces it? And what replaces it is participation. And it's really this idea of people don't want to be talked at, they want to be partners, they want to be co-creators. We talk a lot at Gather Voices about co-creation, the idea of thinking, what does it mean to co-create? And I think about that with education and events in particular, the fact that the folks that you're talking to, again, are experts. They have their lived experience in your profession or your trade. And so them sharing their real experience can actually help other people learn. So, for example, we see that somebody leaving an educational program, having other people who are in that program just describe what they learned is in many ways those short stories from attendees will actually be more valuable later than the replay of the whole session, right? There's something you experience when you're sitting in the room and being there that's very hard to experience later on. But if I could filter that content through the lived experience of a bunch of different people, I could gain a lot of knowledge that would really stick for me. And so we see video as, again, the most important kind of content. It's hearing people's voices, seeing their faces, creates a sense of a realness that people really are seeking today, especially in an age when you can go into Chat GPT and have it write, you know, 50 blog posts in 5 minutes. So we're inundated with a lot of mediocre content that doesn't feel real or authentic. And the antidote to that is those real and authentic member stories. Um, okay, so another question for you all. If the barrier to content collection went to zero, if it was easy to get content, what stories would you run to collect? So thinking about where you are in an organization and the kinds of people that you serve and the kinds of stories that they have. And if you could just point your finger at different audiences within your organization and get whatever kind of story, what would it be? So share that with us here. So Joshua says, how current policies affect our members. Yeah, that's a really important one, I think. Uh, let's see. Daniel talks about grassroots leaders exemplifying our mission. So great. Um, Longtime members and new members, says Lindsay. Frontline experience in the field, says Nancy. How being a part of the community shaped their career, says Jennifer. Yeah, that's really interesting. Amy talks about, hi Amy, talks about more stories from the disability community. Um, yeah, who can't use many of the traditional tools. Absolutely. I was just at the Association of Maternal and Child Health Programs conference this week, and there was a lot of talk about disability and how disability stories can get told and in what ways, and I think that's very interesting. Amanda talks about event testimonials. Excellent, good stuff. Keep sharing. So, there's a big barrier to collecting stories. And I think, the way that we think is it's not about a story. It's about a systematic way to be collecting stories all the time. And I think that's the big mind shift that organizations have to get into, because when you start thinking about doing an interview, or hiring a video crew for this one thing, or asking these people to do this thing. There's big barriers. It's high effort. I always talk about chasing content when you need it versus building a library of content over time that builds itself. And the way to shift this is through what we call workflows, which is the idea of saying, well, every time somebody does X, we should ask them for their story. So we shouldn't be chasing people for content when we need it. We should be asking people to share all the time. And so an example of that would be if somebody joins as a new member, the first requirement, in addition to probably filling out lots of forms, should be make a video and introduce yourself to the community, or tell us about the things you're really interested in, or so imagine that that's happening all the time. And not just that. Think about it with every registration for every event or course, or just think about all the places where you've already captured somebody's attention, and then you can ask them to share their story. And if you can build that in, it reduces the amount of work that you have to do and the chasing you have to do, and it exponentially increases the amount of content that you have. And so, the old way of telling stories is, the staff member or the camera, the conference, getting a handful of things. And it's not doesn't have to be that way anymore, right? You can create ways that scale, and the old ways just simply don't scale. You also end up often connecting to the same usual suspects, the people who are willing to tell stories, and you keep going back to those usual suspects. And it doesn't have to be that way. And so, what associations need is they need hundreds of voices, not five. And again, depending obviously on the size of your organization. But, and again, thinking about it, where the other thing I've seen over and over and over again is that organizations have superstars in their organizations. They have people who are incredible and who should have their own TV shows, right? And most of the time, the organization does not know that these people exist, or they know the people, but they have no idea that they have these skills, the charisma or the talent, to the way that they share. And the only way you find that out is if you're asking lots of people to share their stories. And so we've seen this over and over again, where somebody shares a story and people are like, that is amazing. Let's ask that person for more. Let's ask that person for more. And so another thing that we've been doing now is when we're collecting video at events or conferences or fly-ins or things like that, asking people at the time they make their first video, saying, would you be willing to be a video ambassador? Oh, what's a video ambassador? Well, that's a program where throughout the year, as different topics come up and questions and educational things we're doing, we would love to ask you to share your opinion and more content. Would you be willing to do that? And what we see is 80–90% of people say yes to that. And so imagine not only capturing 100 videos at an event, but having 100 people who've said, we're ready to do video all the time. Just continue to ask us. And so that's what's possible when you think of it more in a systemic and systematic way than when you are kind of doing one-offs and trying to reach people as one-offs. So I'm going to show you a few things just so you get an idea of these. um, Events. So just asking people basic questions at events. Why does the community matter? What challenges? What are you learning? Why did you come to this event? How's this been for you? And so here's a video from PCMA's Convening Leaders Conference.
Hi, I'm Jana Cook, event planner for the Home Depot from Atlanta, Georgia. This is my first convening leaders, and I've learned so much over the last couple of days. I've been able to network with people that work in a similar field, but do completely different job roles. And it's really challenged me to think about my day-to-day role differently. I've been equipped with strategies and techniques that can help me grow personally and professionally. It is my first convening leaders, but it won't be my last.
A great video, somebody who was just picked off the street, so to speak, somebody who was just asked to share her experience, and is sharing something that became a kind of insight there, which is that she has a certain job role, but she works in a certain company in a certain industry, and she's around those people all the time. She doesn't have that opportunity to connect with people just in her role. Well, those are great messages to recruit other people who are feeling the same way, and those people who are again, sort of feel like they're on a little island inside their organization, wanting to connect across organizations, in this way. Um, this is something actually that was just this week. So, and I'll show you this video in a second here on the left. But another is advocacy. We see that, advocacy messaging is super important. And advocacy fly-ins, I'm a bit obsessed with this particular thing right now, which is we do these fly-ins, many organizations do, and you bring people to Washington or even state level fly-ins, and you bring people there and you spend a day learning about issues and training them, and so that they know the talking points, they know the advocacy asks, they know the stuff, and then it's done in a day and it's gone. And so that is like an incredible opportunity to go, oh, we've just spent effort to bring these people here. We've spent effort to educate them about how to talk about policy and the policy issues and how to tell their own personal stories in an effective way. We should be capturing that. And so just this week, I was with as I mentioned before, I was with the Association of Maternal and Child Health Programs, and helping them collect, 100 stories from their conference and their fly-in. And this is something that we did. I will just say this is something that we did 2 days ago when it was 80 degrees and sunny, and now now it's snowing. Um, but this, I think, video speaks for itself here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Eden Desta, Senior Communications Analyst at AmChip, and we are at the tail end of our conference here at Hill Day, and we just want to take the time on behalf of our organization and say thank you so much for sharing your stories. We see you, we hear you, and just know that these stories are going beyond the walls of social media. They're being heard by our policymakers, they're being heard by decision makers, and in the community. So we're so honored to represent your voices in our stories. So thank you so much.
And so I love that because this was after getting, 100 videos, and for her to say to the community, thank you so much, and to do it right in front of the Capitol there is a pretty powerful thing. So they got a bunch of videos from their advocates in this same shot, where folks can go home and be proud of the fact that they came to Washington and that they sat there with legislators and were able to share their stories. And so it's really interesting because the key to advocacy stuff is that combination of the talking points of the organization and the goals, and then the personal experiences of the advocates, right? And so every one of those advocate stories is different. Everybody's talking about their own thing, the children that they lost, for example, or the work that they do in the state that they're in and the particular challenges that they have. That's a really powerful thing to do. Education is another one. I mentioned before that, having people talk about what they learned is a really powerful way to help other people learn. So just asking people after a session, whether that's an online course that you run or in an event that you do, to say, what was your takeaway? What did you learn? How are you going to apply it? Asking for real feedback. That's another piece of this, especially for events, is the fact that the fact that um, people are are that at events that people are able to share their stories like this. So we're definitely seeing that those people's takeaways can be something that's really, really powerful. Um, Nancy asks regarding the video burnout issue. Um, I'm not sure exactly what you mean by video burnout issue. Is a company like Other Voices integrating AI tools to repurpose video content in other formats? Yeah, 100%. I think that's really key. And thinking about having core original assets and then being able to create lots of different ways in which those assets can go out in the world so that a video of somebody at an event can be part of a montage of videos of them event. It can be a vertical video that goes on Instagram. It can be a YouTube short. It can be part of a longer piece that's done. And we see that as something that's really important. You know, you have people, you have great videos and people who've said great things. You should be using that in lots of different places all the time. You're right. People are bombarded with video, but we also see video as the kind of content that people seek out. I mean, people are not on TikTok to look at pictures. They're not on Instagram anymore to look at pictures either, really. Video is dominating the time that people are spending, period, and online, obviously, in particular. And so we also see that video can, for example, increase click-through rates of emails. So we're seeing, 2 to 3 times the clicks on an email that has a thumbnail in it with a play button. People are much more likely to click on that play button and go to the web page where that video would be and to play than they are a text link in a big block of texts in email. And whether we like it or not, we're in a world where attention spans have gotten shorter and people are reading less and watching more. And, that's just the fact of how people communicate today. And so, um, if you, on the one hand, I think, Nancy, you're right that there's video everywhere. And on the other hand, I don't think there's enough video in many places. And what I mean by that is, if you do an audit of all your emails, for example, how many emails include a link to video content? And what I see is still, 80% of stuff are these, again, emails with big blocks of text that, or these newsletters with multiple sections and kind of a long scroll of stuff. And I just feel like the behavior of people has shifted where their attention spans aren't as great. And even having a 30-second video annotation to an article that you have or something longer can help people go, oh, that's interesting. I'm going to go read that versus just trying to push them directly, to looking at that or reading that. But you're right about the formats. I think the technology today is available to turn long video into short video, to turn regular aspect ratio video into vertical video, to add stylized captions, to collect content in multiple languages. Those are all things that you can do today and do rapidly in a way that wasn't possible before. We're doing a lot of that at Gather Voices, but that's available in lots of different places. This is another example of what I was talking about with training and education. So the Texas Association of School Business Officials basically getting their community to create videos and getting a lot more engagement from that. And you can that details and videos of that, case studies and stuff's on our website. And so, the bottleneck, the future bottleneck has shifted, right? You obviously need to get leadership buy-in, but the ability today to create a pipeline of video content is there and possible, and all of you can do it. And so, the hard part was, how do we get any kind of content from people? That can be solved today. The next thing, and this is the thing that I'm excited about and sort of where it's going, is how do we then take that content and organize it and find the right stories and pull out the intelligence of it and not just have a bunch of stuff, right? And so that's something that I think in the early days of Gather Voices was a challenge. If we did have clients of ours who were able to collect hundreds or thousands of videos, which we do, how do you manage that? How do you know what's good? How do who's going to watch all that stuff? Uh, so those were challenges that we had before. And in the last couple years, those challenges are being solved. And the rapid pace at which the technology is changing and AI is changing is remarkable. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this at the end as well, but we need to make some assumptions. You know where this is going. You know how that whatever AI you're using today is the worst AI will ever be. And it's going to be, it's doubling in power every 6 months, let's say. So the thought there is that if something doesn't quite work today, it will work tomorrow. And when we are planning, you think about an association planning cycle, the days of, oh, we're going to do an RFP and then we're going to take 6 months for that. And then we're going to do this 1 year installation thing of our new AMS system or something, right? Those kinds of thinking about projects is bumping up against the fact that 6 months later that whole thing is different now, right? Everything is changing so rapidly, and so we really have to rethink a bit of how we think about these kinds of projects, how we think about tools and what we use, how we think about the speed in which we test and do experiments. And, I always, when I was doing Pee Wee football, it's when they taught me that if you want to get that runner with the ball, you have to have that right angle of attack. You have to cut them off. You have to run to where the ball will be, not to where it is today. And I think that's the lesson a bit here with AI and technology. We need to be thinking about where it's going to be and not just where it is today, because that will be completely different tomorrow. So I want to talk a little bit about, let me just check um, some stuff in the chat here. Nancy says, love to hear more about translating videos into other languages. Yeah, that's a great example of technology, of turning stories into intelligence. We have found that organizations that have a global footprint, of people and people from all over different countries. And in the conference, the AmChip thing I was at just this week, lots of folks from Puerto Rico, who are Spanish speakers. When you let people speak in their own language, it completely changes their ability to be comfortable and articulate their message. And not only that, it shows them a certain kind of respect that they really appreciate. And so that's something that was hard before. It was hard to figure out that, what do I do with that? I have this video in Spanish and only these people speak Spanish. Well, today that's changed. We used to have an integration at Gather Voices with a company that did human translation. Amazing job of it. It was expensive and it was slow. And they're out of business now. And they're out of business now because AI is really capable of not only transcribing videos but also translating videos. And so something that was not in the Gather Voices platform 2 years ago, that's in the Gather Voices platform today, is that the video will be automatically transcribed in over 150 languages. So somebody can be speaking in Mandarin or speaking in Spanish, and we will automatically be adding caption file in that native language. And then we'll automatically be translating that file into English. And then that file could be translated into any of 150 other languages with a click. And as you know, with captions, with proper names or things, there are still some like, oh, it got our acronym wrong or something like that. But the quality overall of the voice to text and the quality of the translation is a million times better than it used to be. It's absolutely remarkable because the AI is not just capable of translating word for word, it's capable of thinking about what's the meaning of this and am I capturing the meaning in that other language? And that's something that just wasn't happening before, right? It was very mechanical. It was like this word means this word means this, and then you get some gibberish because it doesn't work that way. And the AI is really solved for that. So that's really interesting. Um, American Sign Language, no, we have not done that yet. I think that's something really interesting. We've have clients that do sign language videos in sign language, and then we've had to do manual translation still of those to be able to put captions on those videos. That's actually a really powerful thing. If you do have people that speak sign language, having people be able to make videos doing sign language, and then having people watch those videos with subtitles is something that's really powerful. We have not yet found a way to automate that, but it's only a matter of time that will be available. Um, and Kenneth asked, does Gather Voices embed with CDN links for newsletters and email? Yeah, all of the Gather Voices videos are hosted. And one of the things we've really tried to do is just make it easy for organizations to use that content. So every video has automatically an animated GIF with a play button, or a static image with a play button, or a short link, all of that goes to a page with that video on it. And so that stuff can just be copy and pasted into a newsletter or something like that, really make it easy. And again, these tools were things that were complicated, and they're not so complicated anymore. So I want to talk about now a little about AI and what we're seeing and doing with that. And the shift is that all of that content can become not just content, it can become insights. And so AI is capable of doing a lot of things that were just very time consuming and manual before. And so one of those things is tagging, for example, creating a taxonomy. Think about if you've ever done that, where you had to think of a kind of a taxonomy of tags or terms, and then you had to have a human, watch everything or read everything and put tags on it and realize, oh, how is this related to this piece? This has these three tags, this has two of those three tags. All of that was just massive amounts of manual work that most people, frankly, just didn't do. And the ability of AI to understand and say, oh, I can see the patterns here. I can see what this is about. I can see how that's related to this. I can make those connections. That's something that's really powerful. And so and we're also training AI to look at the video itself, right? And say, not only here's the content, but did the person smile and have their eyes open? And did they have a positive feeling or a negative feeling? And, can we layer on some of that metadata with the content and then surface videos that fit certain criteria? I want to know the best videos, the best, and here's what I mean by the best, right? I mean, the content has to be good, but I also mean the video itself has to be good. How do I measure that? What does that look like? Again, that was something that was very hard and something that's not as hard. And so if you could go out and ask people the same question, um, then that's really powerful about being able to extract data from that. So the ability to have every response analyzed. I've done a lot of consulting in my career, and a lot of like program consulting and things like that, where I would write into the proposal that I could do 10 interviews or 15 interviews, and then we'd analyze those interviews and have a kind of strategic vision of it. And now that's really scalable in a way that it wasn't before. Is wow, we could actually talk to a lot more people and be able to do that at a budget that's not necessarily any bigger than the budget that I needed to talk to 10 people. And so the possibilities are really, incredible. So, thinking about what AI could extract from these stories, and I think this is also all very much at its beginning. We don't have a lot of organizations that are getting stories and getting feedback and building a culture of storytelling and feedback where they have this much content, but it's coming and we're seeing it. I would say probably one of our top folks that we see is ASAE has been doing a great job of being able to collect stories from CAEs and members and volunteers, and pretty much every program they do today, they're asking people to share those stories. Um, Nicole, is there anything that did you? Uh, I just saw you came on camera, so I don't know if there was anybody you can talk to. Okay. Cool. So AI has the ability to think about what are those themes, what are people talking about, what do people think is important, and we're seeing that even so video content obviously is very rich because you can measure a lot and people can say a lot in a really easy way. But we're seeing this now coming to things like the online communities where people are chatting and things like that. So being able to go, hey, what are those topics that people are talking about? Hey, let's, instead of guessing about what topics we think folks would be interested at our event coming up, why don't we actually see what people are talking about in the community and use that as a baseline? So we're getting there. We're getting there. And language. So there's another one, common language. I talk about it like this, but boy, everybody in the community talks about it like this. Everybody says, um, we say climate change, and everybody says global warming, right? Like those are the things that you don't know unless you're able to see the sentiment, see what people are talking about, um, and sharing stories there. So. Let's see. Joshua asks, is there a concern of control of intellectual property by using AI to extract this type of information out of videos? I think that's a good question. I think it really depends on your organization and what's in the community. I think if you have a private community of members and they're talking about stuff, I would assume there's already some rules about what's there, and if somebody's sharing content in that public forum or that forum that's a member forum, there's a certain expectation that that is information that will be shared with the organization. But I think governance is a key thing. So I will say, as AI becomes more and more important, we do need to think about where are our red lines, what tools do we use, what's private and what's not, and governance issues. If I'm sure some of you are familiar with Sidecar Global, and they have a certification for association AI professionals. I think there's a big chunk of that learning and training there at Sidecar that is about governance. And again, I think every organization, if you haven't thought about it, what's ours, what's theirs, what can people share, and saying we have to have some policies and some clarity around that. So I'm not going to tell you today exactly what that should be for you, but I do think that that's an important thing to be thinking about as well. And so, we see this AI-driven stories, and what I mean is that stories can inform lots of different things for your organization: marketing, advocacy, education, and leadership. I think for boards, the kind of things you can learn from your members and your members' voices is really powerful. So, asking you all a question here: what is one key decision your leadership team could make differently if you had a continuous real-time picture of member needs? So if you were collecting member thoughts and needs and stories all the time and you were analyzing those, what kind of decision making, how could that impact your leadership decision making? So love to see you share there. Yeah, Nancy says member value proposition could be better defined. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It's like we think people join for these reasons, but people are telling us, that it's these other things. Uh, I think that's something that is very powerful. Um, let's see. Daniel says better determine what specifically we should advocate for federally. Yeah, great point. It's like you want your advocacy and your lobbying to reflect the real needs and real issues that your community is talking about, and not everybody's engaged in those questions or visible in their engagement. Um, Adrian says adaptability to pivot mid legislative season if members are new, highlight new or different issues. Yeah, great point. You make a plan for the legislative season, and then we go to war or something changes, right? And all of a sudden we're in a very different world, whatever that may be, and you want to know that, you want to hear that. So this is great. So I think it's really exciting to see all of your things that you're thinking about, because this is the world that you should be driving your organization toward, is how do we get there? And it's not a one step process to go from not collecting member content, not telling member stories, or doing a little thing here and there, to a world where you have this continual access to member insights. But that's the world we're going, sort of run to where the ball is going to be thinking about that and how that could work. And I think when you talk about leadership buying into, why does it make sense for us to invest in member storytelling, for example? Traditionally you say, well, because we have these great marketing videos, we'll have stuff for social media, we'll have stuff in our emails, we'll be able to get people engaged. Those are still really good reasons, but now you can layer on this other reason, which is insights, and saying, well, we will know a lot more about who our people are and what they care about if we are doing this. So, and that's what I'm talking about here, the feedback engine. We're seeing this, we're hearing this from our event clients, is that and I'd love to hear what you all think about it, but we're hearing that the survey responses are down, that people are not filling out surveys as much. Getting people to fill out surveys is challenging. And, particularly in an event context, people leave and it's like they get a link and it's like fill out survey. And, the idea of like, well, how can we get people in real time to be sharing, or how can we people walk out of a session to talk about that and not be waiting, till they forget what happened? And how do we make it easier for them to share? And so I think the future model is this idea of continuous voice. So it's always on feedback, insights when decisions are being made, and that's something that's the world that we're headed to. So just a kind of really basic framework, the idea of capturing stuff, organizing it into a kind of searchable library, and then being able to analyze that and trends, and then be able to use that stuff that you analyzed to say, how does that affect what we teach, what we do at our conference, what we offer for member benefits, and the things like that. Yeah, Nancy says surveys are just not timely anymore. Yeah, exactly right. Uh, and again, this is all of this world, this new world is emerging. And so there isn't all the best practices and all the things and the tools that do everything. There's really what's possible has changed, and again, it's moving very fast. But it starts with you all having a vision for what that could be inside your organization, and then figuring out, well, how do we do that? What tools do we use? What do we already have that we're not fully utilizing, for example? And how do we utilize that? So, collecting stories, we talked about this before, but just touch points. These are kind of the big ones, events, advocacy campaigns, education programs, member milestones, volunteer leadership. How do you bake in and create a systematic way of capturing stories, in a way that is going to be valuable for you all the time, and not chasing stories when you need it? Um, Beth Ann asks about privacy when utilizing AI. Yeah, I mentioned before that I think that having some rules in general in your organization about AI and AI governance is really important, and what you share with AI, what the expectation of members is, if they're sharing with the organization, what's going to be done with that, who owns that material, those things. And so I mentioned Sidecar, which has a lot of learning programs that specifically focus on AI, but also on governance. and that thinking about that's really important. So it's really about setting the rules and then living with the rules. And I think one of those things with AI and privacy is not to be using free tools. I think that we've seen that, if something is free, then you're the product. And so, that's the best way to look at it. So if you're using the free versions of ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, then they're going to suck out as much data and value from that as possible. And when you pay for something, you then have a contract and you can say, well, what does that say? What do I own? What do they own? But there's another layer to it, right? Which is the organizational layer. What is the organization's agreement with its members related to this? And so having governance is just really important. So I would say every organization should have a vision of uses of AI and governance rules around that and be kind of running in that direction and thinking about it. And there's lots of great stuff online. If you want to contact me at any time, I could point you in the direction of both people and some of those resources. So organizing, so building a library of content and places where things can be found. I remember in the old days, when you had boxes of photos from events, sitting around your organization and figuring out what to do with them. And we've tried to do this with Gather Voices with video, is saying, how do we have all the content in one place? How do we have it searchable? How do we have every piece of content has a summary automatically? How do we know when, where, who, all of those things were done? And how do we have permissions and all of that live with those videos? And so those are things that we've built in to our platform, but there's lots of ways to do that. And whether it's with Gather Voice or with something else, the idea is, hey, I need to have all of that stuff accessible and figure out then how we can then extract insights from it. I don't know if any of you are playing with Claude co-work or Claude Code, but the idea is now you can create a server where you have lots of data and you can have an AI agent basically doing amazing things with all of that data. But there's a lot of privacy and security risks with that in terms of just having to think it through, right? What do I want to allow it to do? What don't I want to allow it to do? How do I wall off access to certain things there as well, so it won't do anything that I don't want it to do. Um, there was a great story actually about a company connecting an AI agent to a vending machine. And it basically said, you own this vending machine. You can order stuff. So it actually gave it credit card and it said you could order things to put in the vending machine. It could set pricing. It could do everything. And it did a lot of weird stuff. It ordered some crazy things to put in there and it gave away a lot of stuff and it did all kinds of things. If you Google that, you could probably read about the story. But thinking about, again, governance, what can we allow it to control? And where's human in the loop? I think that's also really important, right? We don't want the business intelligence to just be what the AI said. We want that business intelligence to help the humans be able to extract data that they just couldn't do manually before and be able to think about it in new ways, but not necessarily just accept whatever the AI says. And so I think that's just really important, right? Being able to accept that. Um, and I can just show you something really quick here, which is this is an example of an AI report of saying collecting a whole bunch of stories at an event, having a basic summary of what did people talk about, and being able to easily say, here's the people who recorded videos, and here's basically what they spoke about. And then being able to do something that was also challenging before, which is notable quotes. Say, hey, we could include this stuff in our written material, in our blog posts, in our social posts, and things like that. But extracting notable quotes from dozens of videos is not the easiest thing in the world, and that's something that could be done really easily there. Let me go back to my slideshow. Okay, so I have like a minute here. And then, obviously the two ways that you can activate all those stories. One is using it as content and campaigns, and the other is how does it affect your strategy? How do you take those insights and do things with them? And I'm happy to share. I will share with the UST folks the deck, and happy to share this with all of you if you'd like it. And so, answering the questions that boards always ask. What are members thinking? What's our biggest challenges? What do people value? All of those kinds of things. And so the future is participatory. We want people to contribute. We want people to stand up and share. And, we really think of this as infrastructure. How do you build that infrastructure to be collecting and sharing stories all the time? And really quickly, the future of that is this is something that we're just launching is instead of just simply having somebody make a video, you can have AI. So this is Gigi, and Gigi will interview people and ask questions and follow-up questions and things that just wasn't, again, possible. That's not just possible when somebody's saying make a 1-minute video. It's like let the AI help extract more of those real stories. And so that's something that's exciting. And so, key takeaway, you already have your most valuable resource. It's in your membership. And as I said, back to the angle of attack, run to where the ball is going to be, not to where it is today. We're getting there. This stuff's changing really rapidly. Tools are moving fast, but thinking about what that vision is, and then don't worry about individual tools as much as how are you moving yourself toward that vision. So thank you very much.